Happy Friday, our fantasy hockey faithful. Welcome back inside the lab to your daily 30-minute source. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, bringing you everything that you need to know from around the world of NHL hockey ahead of this busy weekend. Torts on his way out. Fantasy value to be had in Philadelphia. Edmonton updates, and that little ball of hate is ready to make his debut in Florida. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're back in the booth and we're pushing closer to the top of the mount of the fantasy hockey realm. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Friday edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Salute, shout out, much love. We see you every dayers. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, where right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 wager hits. Steele, I feel like right now in the fantasy game, it's very easy to stay complacent, tap out, do whatever you will to perhaps get away from the game. And I say, don't do it, regardless of where you are in the standings, in or out of the playoffs, in or out of the money. Keep your finger on the pulse and capitalize on some good situations. So you and I are going to bring everyone out there what's going on across the league that's impacting your squad. Tortorella, he's out. I think this means good things for the Philly Young Guns. McDavid, Draisaitl, Skinner. A little touch on some questions from our listeners out there talking about goaltending. I'm intrigued to see what you have to say about that one. And Brad Marchand going to be making his Florida debut. We haven't spoken a ton about these Panthers or what we think this Marchand addition will mean. So we'll get there. Big time bets. We got a 6-game betting board trying to stay red hot, by the way, Mr. Rodin. So before we get there, over to you, because look, at the end of the day, the writing was on the wall. We spoke about this yesterday. And as much as I know you like this, probably because you're a clear Torts, you've been clear about Torts. What does this mean for the Flyers, more importantly?
I think it means a lot, and I'm on the same page with you. I think this is going to benefit them in the long term. And like you said, everyone knows how I feel about John Tortorella, so I'm not going to kick him while he's down. I mean, he doesn't really care what anyone has to say, especially me, someone he has no idea exists on this planet. But yeah, I mean, when you look at this organization, and I'm specifically looking at Danny Briere right now, who is running the front office for the Philadelphia Flyers. I think he's done an okay job being patient with the rebuild of this team right over the span since he's taken over as general manager. Obviously, some tough decisions with Cutter Gauthier having to make that trade because he wouldn't sign there. Again, trying to shape this team for the future, drafting Michkov, obviously.
Yeah,
I'm looking at him because you really have to be specific with the next head coach you bring in. And I know Brad Shaw is taking over for the time being, being named the interim head coach for the Philadelphia Flyers. But you really have to be specific with what you're trying to do and what the culture you're bringing to the Philadelphia Flyers. Who's the next guy that you're going to bring in to steer this team in the right direction? You know, I'm just going to throw some names out there. Joel Quenneville, Bruce Boudreau, Rick Tocchet, who I believe's contract is ending up at the end of the season. You really got to bring in the right guy to impact and influence these young guys who you and I both know, and a lot of fantasy hockey GMs out there know as well, have a lot of potential. Travis Konecny is a very underrated star in this league right now. He plays for a bad organization, but fantasy-wise, he is an absolute gem out there. And then you look up and down the roster with these young guys, again, impacting, influencing their game. Foerster, Cates, Brink, Michkov, Konecny still, Tippett, Drysdale on the back end, Samuel Ersson in the crease. We've seen potential glimpses of bright spots with the Philadelphia Flyers, but they haven't been competitive for a long time. And I do really think John Tortorella's coaching style is a big reason for that. So fantasy-wise, again, I think it's really important to see who Danny Briere brings in next, because it's going to have a big influence. You kind of look towards what the Ottawa Senators have done over the last few seasons, bringing in new ownership, bringing in new management. Again, some big splash at the trade deadline for for Dylan Cousins, which they've been talking about that for a while. And again, I also look over to the Buffalo Sabres, Lindy Ruff. I think he's going to be out next based on the season that we've seen from him. Again, maybe changing front office management as well, head coaching to get that team going. I'm going to go over to one last team, the Montreal Canadiens. Again, it's really important for who impacts and influences this young core right now, because you look at Martin St. Louis and the influence and impact he's had on Cole Caulfield, how he's influenced Nick Suzuki, potential with Lane Hudson on the back end. That's very important, but this team has the potential and they have rising stars, but they need the right guy at the wheel.
Tyson Foerster, first-round pick. Matvey Michkov, first-round pick. Jacob Pelletier, first-round pick. Owen Tippett, first-round pick. Jamie Drysdale, you know where I'm going here. There is some opportunity. I'm not here to hang it on sports, but perhaps this change of the scenery behind the bench down the stretch, Steele, you and I just spoke about how bad some of these teams have been and how maybe nobody's paying attention to their hidden fantasy gems. Do I think just because Torts is out and an interim coach is in, that all of a sudden all of these peripheral pieces that were kind of lagging just come to life and you just auto add Philadelphia Flyers? No, I don't. But would I be shocked with a bit of breath of fresh air? This guy wore out his welcome in Philadelphia. It's one thing if you're winning games and you're competitive. This guy had his beef with Couturier. He had his beef with the media. He had his beef with young players. He had his beef with the goaltending. Pick your pick. His act was tired. And it's one thing, again, if you're in the top of the table, but you're not. And maybe this breath of fresh air, especially, we talked about the Travis Sanheims of the world, the more bona fide, quote unquote, fantasy pieces you can count on. All I wanted to say is, one, it's NHL news. We're going to bring it to you guys every single episode, regardless. Headline news, you're going to get it here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, but you're also going to get the impact on your fantasy team. So this is a coach. They're hired to be fired. And at the end of the day, this is a situation that I think some of these players are just far too good to be underachieving for this long, Steele. So let's keep our eyes peeled. Maybe it's a next year situation, but you and I, as we head to this point of the year, are going to continue to look ahead. Never too early to look ahead. It can be too late, however. So we don't want you to be that GM. Let's talk quickly, I think, Steele, about the Oilers. Just very quickly, if you want to get into the goaltending after the break, let's do that too.
Yeah.
Draisaitl should be back in the next couple of games. Head coach Chris Knobloch saying should be about a week. But what I think the really intriguing news here is that McDavid is longer, and it's going to be at least another week or two. Does it make sense in terms of they're playing the long game and they need him and all of those kinds of obvious angles? Yes. But as a fantasy GM, you're sitting there throwing chucks at the wall right now, because that could really be that kind of angle that I can't throw out a fantasy waiver wire option to help you guys here. That's just them breaks, and it's very unlucky for fantasy GMs who were clearly waiting patiently for Connor McDavid. I don't know about you, Steele, but for me, there is no way to spin this positively. This one just straight up sucks.
There isn't. It's McDavid and Draisaitl, and two very important players, obviously, to the organization, as we saw in that game against the Dallas Stars. Yeah, I mean, you work so hard all season long in your fantasy league. You have these players, and then they go down at this point in the season. With Matthew Tkachuk, Roman Josi, McDavid, Heiskanen. These guys are very important. At the most critical time of the season, they're out, they're done until the playoffs come around. So yeah, it's definitely painful. I mean, speaking for myself, I'm in a matchup right now. I'm in the championship round right now.
Yeah, you are.
Yes, I am. Real deal Steel doing it out here.
Yes.
Yeah, championship round. It's a 2-week matchup, and I've got McDavid sitting on my IR right now. And fortunately enough, I'm up 7-6-1 in this in the match so far, but we're going to talk about that. I'm going to touch on that with goaltenders after the break. My goaltending is absolutely letting me down. McDavid being on the IR is letting me down. And it's very unfortunate. I mean, we're going to talk about Skinner. We're going to talk about goaltenders and this Oilers team right now when we come back after the break.
All I know is things went from looking very rosy for this Edmonton Oilers team for the most part. And now there are some serious concerns, especially when you know the teams that they have to go through. The LA Kings are playing some great hockey right now. That's not good news. The Minnesota Wild lurking. Colorado Avalanche, Dallas Stars, we know all about it. We'll continue to break down all of the angles that you need, fantasy or otherwise, right here, 30 minutes in or out every single day, including this weekend, a Saturday special. Once again, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The madness, it's here, Sweet 16, baby. And FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers get that $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 wager hits. That's $200 in extra bucks to use on everything from the buzzer beaters to the Cinderellas to who cuts down those nets. Picking favorites, staying in the action with live betting, easy and fast same game parlays. We love it all here on this podcast, and that's why we love to use FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on college hoops action all tournament long. That's FanDuel. Join it today.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day, Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support.
100%.
You show us on the pod every single day. Edmonton Oilers, McDavid and Draisaitl. They're going to miss the next couple of games, obviously. It hurts for your fantasy playoff matchups right now, but I think really it's deeper than that. This team really got exposed in my eyes in the game against the Dallas Stars, and I know they clawed back a little bit in the third period. They ended up losing only 4-3. But they got exposed defensively. And when you look at some of the pieces, again, I'm going back to the pieces they lost this offseason. Dylan Holloway, 60 points in 73 games. Ryan McLeod, who they traded.
Oh, you're going there. I like it.
43 points in 67 games. Fogel, 40 points in 70.
Oh, your boy.
Philip Broberg, 27 points in 60 games. They've all been playing exceptionally well with their new organizations right now. And the guys they brought in have not lived up to their end of the bargain. And defensively, they got absolutely exposed for what's going to happen in the playoffs if, God forbid, McDavid or Draisaitl go down to injury. Defensively, they had no clue what they were doing. And Stuart Skinner, this is how I'm tying it into goaltenders. He's just been so bad the last 5 games. You look at what, when we look at what we do for the fantasy hockey draft, and, I implemented myself a little bit of the 0G strategy for some of my teams out there.
Okay.
I think at this point in the season, to me, it's evidently important how important it is to draft goaltenders than using the 0G strategy. And I still think the 0G strategy is still a good one to use from time to time or depending on formats. But at this point in the playoffs, I'm getting absolutely killed in the goalie categories in every single matchup I'm in right now. Stuart Skinner, in 4 out of his last 5 games, has put below an .870 save percentage. Karel Vejmelka, again, you look at some of these above average, decent goaltenders who you can
0G targets.
0G targets. When you get to the playoffs, it's evident they start to wither away. They're not as capable as they were in the season. You sometimes obviously you get lucky with, drafting Logan Thompson in the 18th round or picking up Mackenzie Blackwood off the waiver wire because he got traded to Colorado. You get lucky sometimes, but in the draft, it's to me, it's becoming more clear how important drafting goaltenders for the long term of the playoffs.
There is obviously always an angle of luck here, right? Regardless of whatever strategy you want to employ. And I'm not saying this to poke a hole in your argument. I'm actually saying it because what I'm trying to spit out is I agree, because take this in terms of just looking at wins, just very quickly. Connor Hellebuck, Jake Ottinger, Andrei Vasilevsky, Sergei Bobrovsky, and Philip Gustafsson. So, in my opinion, those would have been a big chunk of goaltenders off the board as you drafted your goalie early and it's panned out for you. Is it going to work out like that every single year? Maybe not. But I think what we're seeing here and what you're kind of pointing out a little bit is it's so not as clear cut as a 0G strategy or a draft a number 1. You have to do your research. You're going to have to get a little bit lucky, and it's going to fall in between steel. And that's why, I totally respect the Apples and Genos guys all day. And clearly over the last few years, because of a lot to do with how goaltenders and goaltending in the NHL has gone to a 2 or even 3-headed split. of course you're going to want to mention the 0G. But at the end of the day, nothing in fantasy is as clear cut as this is the strategy you employ. It has to be fluid. It has to be year to year. You're going to have to get a little lucky, injury or otherwise. So I love that you're bringing this up, because I think more discussion needs to be focused on this topic, because it's not just as easy as 0G and I'm going to avoid goaltenders. This is what happens. And look, you mentioned Logan Thompson. I love all the angles that you're covering. At the end of the day, the Stuart Skinner situation is one of those that I don't know. Last year they overcame it, right? He kind of proved his worth in the postseason. I have a lot less confidence in that happening this year. They've called up a goaltender from the AHL. My fantasy takeaway here actually is, Steele, I see a lot of value in Calvin Pickard. I actually think, just de facto, I don't know what he's going to do in terms of wins and losses. This is the guy's crease right now. So if you're out there and you're looking for a little bit of a takeaway here, I would say keep your eye on Calvin Pickard.
Yeah, Stuart Skinner took a pretty good shot from Mikko Rantanen in the game against the Dallas Stars on Wednesday. Knobloch said he wasn't joining the team for their next game on the road. But again, as of we know right now, he is just expected to miss that one game. He could potentially be back for the one, I believe, on Sunday. But
Calvin Pickard plays well. You never know.
You never know what might happen. Again, there's a reason why they didn't. They made it known that they weren't targeting goaltenders at the trade deadline. I guess they have faith in both Pickard and Skinner to get the job done in the playoffs. But yeah, this is my final thing on the 0G strategy and goaltending right now. Before going into this season, I had the process and the mental thought of using the 0G strategy, because beforehand you knew my strategy of picking a vital key player from each position in the first 3 rounds, whether that's goaltender first, forward second, defenseman third. That was my strategy, at least getting one crucial piece. Again, 0G strategy definitely works. It got me to this point that I'm in the playoffs right now. But I'm just seeing how it's more vital to have those Connor Hellebucks. Again, you get lucky with Thompson, but Hellebuck, Gustafsson, like you said, Shesterkin, Vasilevsky, having those guys are crucial for the playoffs. And I'm getting exposed right now in my goalie categories.
And I think realistically, my main takeaway here is it's a year-to-year, league-to-league basis. And I think that's one of those you can get pigeonholed into doing something because it sounds good, it looks sexy on paper. All the respect due to the Apples and Geno's guys who obviously pioneered that angle. And it's still worthwhile, but it's nothing in fantasy is just that cut and dry. You got to take it on a league by league, year to year basis. However, Steele, year to year basis for this Florida Panthers team over the last few has been nothing but successful. Everyone out there has spoken about what the Bennett, Tkachuk, Brad Marchand line could look like. Right now, it's going to be Bennett and Marchand. Matthew Tkachuk, I don't think they're going to rush back one iota. Mackie Semiskevich has been playing pretty well as well. And it's looking like Marchand, Semiskevich, and Bennett are going to form a pretty interesting line. And all I have to say is, and you and I haven't spoken a ton about what we think this means for the Panthers, I think this is a very intriguing angle that I don't know what I'm going to see from Brad Marchand. And I know that's a cop-out answer, but he didn't want out of Boston. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not just immediately going to say that this is going to mean fantasy success for this guy down the stretch. So be very wary of how much you lean on a guy in Brad Marchand that we know has a lot of miles on the body. He hasn't played since the Four Nations face-off, 47 points in 61 games, still relevant. We got to highlight this. He's coming back. Keep your finger on the pulse.
I disagree. I think there's still lots of value with Brad Marchand going to the Florida Panthers, because even though he wanted to stay in Boston, I'm looking toward, comparing this to the Brock Nelson with Colorado trade.
Okay.
Obviously didn't want to leave the New York Islanders, but he's had tremendous success so far with the Colorado Avalanche. Really good chemistry with Nichushkin and Druin so far. So I think the same thing's going to happen for Brad Marchand, regardless of them wanting to stay where they were. They're still competitive guys. Obviously, some of the most competitive people, athletes on the planet, fighting to win at the chance for a Stanley Cup. So as much as Brad Marchand wanted to stay in Boston, obviously, of course he did. He's been there his whole entire career. Now he gets a chance to play for the Stanley Cup with the reigning Stanley Cup champions. And who better to replicate and duplicate Matthew Tkachuk's game than the Rat himself, Brad Marchand? I mean, it's the perfect situation, scenario, whatever you want to, however you want to look at it. And then Matthew Tkachuk comes back for the playoffs. That is going to be an insane second line to go up against.
What I will say, if anyone's going to get the most out of players like that, it's our boy Paul Maurice. This is the Paul Maurice podcast. Let's talk about how these divisions are going to shake out. I haven't brought this to you, but I think we can almost go division by division. I was thinking next week, maybe we just stop in at each division, break down what's going on playoff wise, fantasy wise. We'll get to it. We'll continue to break down all the angles that you guys need to know to wrap up this fantasy season.
And big time bets coming up next after the break. But first, this episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. And if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Whether I'm at a game or traveling, 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab and keeps me feeling refreshed. It's so convenient. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery store or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning. Share with your friends and family out there. It really does mean the world to Flip and I. Seeing all that love and support on Twitter, on the YouTube channel, and all across our social medias. We appreciate you out there. Big time bets on the board for Friday night. Let's start off the weekend like you started off the start of this week. You've been red hot with the picks, my friend. So over to you. Where you looking first?
I'm looking at this Vancouver Canucks Columbus Blue Jackets situation, and I think I've been very clear about how the Vancouver Canucks have done me dirty. So I'm honing in on their best player. Look, if Quinn Hughes finishes this season on a heater, and I know this is a bold take, he deserves some love for the MVP, and I know he won't get it because of the real seasons going on at the top. For me, the MVP should hold true to the most valuable player. You take away Quinn Hughes from this team, the Vancouver Canucks are straight F'd still. This is a family show, and I'm not going to drop any F-bombs. But you take away him and Kevin Lankinen, and this team maybe has 6 wins. Anyway, over his last 8 games, 2 goals, 6 assists. What he does best, distribute the puck. He's right there behind Cale Makar in terms of anytime assist. I can't take Cale Makar anytime assist tonight, so let me take the second place D-man in assists. 52 out of 58 games this year for Quinn Hughes in his career against the Columbus Blue Jackets as well. And I had this up because this is juicy. 9 career game steal, 13 anytime assists. Hit me with Quinn Hughes anytime assists, my first pick.
Look, if you can't go with 1A or 1B, you might as well go with 1C. Quinn Hughes, anytime assist, anytime point. Those are the 3. Those are your 3 favorite player props, unless you're talking about Seth Jarvis as well. I'm looking at this game. I'm looking at this game too. I'm not taking the player prop. I'm taking it down, taking the over 5.5 at minus 50. Blue Jackets.
I like
Canucks. Obviously, the Blue Jackets have really just a wrench was thrown into their season with this, the way they've played over the last few weeks, fighting for a playoff spot, now back by 6 or 5 points, 7-game losing streak and whatnot. I'm not taking anyone on the money line, strictly over 5.5 at minus 150 for my first pick. Rangers on the money line, minus 162 against the Ducks. And then for my third pick, Jets on the money line against the Devils, minus 178. Lock of the night, Rangers money line.
Love the Jets on the money line. I'm concerned about your Rangers pick on the money line. I don't know on that one, but however, there hasn't been a lot of times lately that you and I have straight up disagreed, and I don't want to start now because the picks are panning out. So I'm going to just spit this out. The Winnipeg Jets on the money line is a great pick here. You're going to get some good value for whatever reason, I guess. New Jersey's got a revenge angle. 7-2-1 for the Winnipeg Jets the last time out. Just the other week, They absolutely pumped the New Jersey Devils 6-1. So maybe that's why there's this revenge angle here. I'm not buying into it, Steele. I'm saying Jets all day on the money line.
Yes,
And
sir.
Kyle Connor has gone 2 games quiet. Last game was a very emotional OT win for this Jets team. And I think maybe that's what Connor needed to fire him back up. Scoreless in 3 out of his last 4. So you're going to get a really good odd for the most part for an anytime Kyle Connor point. It's going to probably be minus 190 or minus 200. In my opinion, that could be minus 400. So slap this into your favorite parlay. In his career, Kyle Connor against the New Jersey Devils also has, and I'll bring this up for you guys because that's what I do, 12 points in 14 career regular season games. Hit me with Kyle Connor anytime point. Parlay it if you want with the Jets on the money line, and I do really like Quinn Hughes anytime assist.
I'm loving the player props here. Of course, the Jets money line as well.
Thank
Those
you.
are the picks. Those are the locks of the night for Friday. Starting off the weekend hot. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. We appreciate you out there. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Make sure you're staying tuned in for Saturday's special. Drop in 1 p.m. on Saturday. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your bets tonight, your weekly matchups, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.